Welcome back, guys. Before we start, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family also. Can you please tell me from where you're watching? Thanks. Have you ever gone somewhere thinking it'll be quiet and relaxing, and it ends up feeling like a nightmare you can't explain? That's what happened to me, and it's not something I talk about often. Mostly because people either don't believe me or they just don't want to hear something that weird. It happened back in the fall of 2022. My cousin Jake and I decided to take a break from our usual routine and head up to a cabin that used to belong to our uncle. The place was tucked deep into a forest called Pine Hollow, about 2 hours from the nearest town. No signal, no people, just trees and silence. Jake had been there once before as a teenager and remembered it being peaceful. Isolated, sure, but peaceful. I was down for it. I'd just gotten over a rough patch, burnout, stress, the usual stuff, and a weekend in the woods sounded perfect. Just us. A cooler full of snacks and no one around to bother us. We parked the truck near the edge of the forest and walked in. Jake had tied little blue strips of cloth to some trees earlier that summer, just to mark the trail back to the road. We saw a few of them fluttering in the breeze as we headed in. They were kind of faded but still there. Good enough. The cabin looked exactly how you'd imagine an old family cabin would. One floor, slanted roof, wooden steps leading to a tiny porch. It creaked when you walked on it. The windows were dusty. It smelled like old books and dried pine needles inside. But it was cozy, safe even. The first day was calm. We unpacked, grilled some burgers, and played cards until the sun started to dip. The air got cold fast once the light faded. I remember that, how the woods suddenly felt too quiet. Not peaceful anymore, just still. That night, around midnight, I woke up needing some water. As I got up, I thought I heard something on the porch, just a soft, slow shuffle. I froze. Jake was asleep on the couch. I waited, holding my breath, but the sound didn't come again. The next morning, I mentioned it to Jake. He laughed it off, probably a raccoon, maybe a deer. He wasn't worried, so I figured I'd let it go. We had breakfast and packed up our stuff to head out. It was just supposed to be one night. I went down the trail first just to make sure we were good to go, but right away something felt off. The blue cloth strips, gone. Completely gone. The ones we'd seen the day before, tied nice and high, so they wouldn't fall off, were just missing. No scraps, no threads, just empty trees. I told Jake and we both looked around, thinking maybe we were just turned around. But the trail felt different too. It curved in ways I didn't remember. Trees I was sure had been on the left were now on the right. We decided to head back to the cabin to regroup, and that's when we noticed something worse. There were new cloth strips tied to the trees, but not the ones we'd used. These were black, and the fabric looked damp, like it had just rained on them. Only, it hadn't rained. These new strips led in a totally different direction, one we hadn't come from. We stood there for a while trying to make sense of it. Someone had been out here, someone close enough to remove every blue strip we'd tied, quietly. That messed with us. We hadn't heard a thing. That second night we stayed in the cabin, but neither of us slept. The woods were dead silent again. No wind. No bugs, no night sounds at all, just stillness. Until around 3 a.m. when we started hearing footsteps. Light, slow, like someone walking barefoot just outside the window. We turned off the lights, sat in the dark, listening. Whatever it was, it never came too close. Just kept circling. I could hear the crunch of leaves, then silence. Then again, a few minutes later from a different side, like it was checking on us. The next morning we were done. We had to leave. Even if we didn't know where those new black strips led, they were the only markers left. So we packed up and followed them. At first, everything seemed fine. The trail was narrow, but it was a trail. We followed it for about 40 minutes before I started to get that weird feeling again. You know when you swear you've been somewhere before? The trees ahead. They looked too familiar. There was this stump with a long split down the middle, and I remembered walking past it earlier. But that couldn't be right. We'd only walked forward. Then the trail curved around a boulder, and I stopped cold. I knew this bend. I remembered stepping over a patch of mushrooms just before it, and they were still there. We were in a loop. Jake didn't believe me until we passed the same weird V-shaped branch we'd seen before. Then the panic kicked in. We tried going off trail, but Pine Hollow's forest floor wasn't exactly friendly. Twisted roots, ankle-deep dips, thorny brush, you name it. And no matter which way we turned, we ended up back at the same place. Again and again. It was like the forest was folding in on itself. At one point, Jake snapped and just sat down, hands in his hair, whispering that we'd never get out. I didn't want to believe him, but I was starting to feel it too. That sense that something wanted us to stay, that we were being toyed with. Then something strange happened. I looked up into the trees, way off to the left, and spotted a hint of blue. A torn scrap of cloth barely clinging to a branch. One of ours. I didn't say anything. I just ran. Jake followed. As we got closer, I saw another one. And another. Like breadcrumbs someone had tried to erase but hadn't quite managed. We followed the faint trail. Hard to see, but still there. The forest felt different along this path. Still creepy, but less wrong. After what felt like forever, I saw the road. The truck. Still there, covered in a thin layer of dust. We jumped in and didn't stop driving until we saw a gas station with a ranger's booth nearby. We went straight to the ranger and told him everything. The missing trail markers. The black cloth. The footsteps. The loop. He didn't act surprised. He just nodded, like it was the kind of thing he heard more than he liked. Then he told us other hikers had reported similar stuff, especially in that part of Pine Hollow. People getting turned around, feeling watched, hearing things. He said the forest was old, that not every part of it was on the maps anymore, and that sometimes the woods had moods. I asked him if anyone had ever disappeared out there. He didn't answer right away, just looked at me and said, "You're lucky you found your own trail again, most people don't. We left after that. I haven't been back. Don't plan to. But I still think about it sometimes, especially when I hear a twig snap in the dark or when everything goes quiet all of a sudden. If you ever find yourself alone in the woods and the trail markers vanish, don't follow the yaw. New ones because someone or something might be leading you somewhere you'll never come back from." It was December 2022, right after Christmas. I was 19 and my cousin Ben and I were both home from college for the holidays. We wanted to do something different before classes started again. Ben suggested a weekend trip to a cabin he found online. It was up in the woods of northern Wisconsin, near a place called Pine Hollow. He said it was cheap and looked cozy. I thought it sounded fun. Ben invited his friend Lisa, and Lisa brought her younger brother Danny. I had met them before and they were cool. We all agreed to go. The cabin was about 5 hours away from our town. We packed our bags, loaded up Ben's SUV, and hit the road. As we drove further north, the scenery changed. The trees got taller and the snow got deeper. The roads became narrower and there were fewer houses. Eventually, our cell phones lost signal. We didn't mind. We were excited to get away from everything. When we arrived, the cabin looked smaller than the pictures online. It was old, with dark wooden walls and a slanted roof covered in snow. There was a small porch with a rocking chair and a chimney with smoke coming out. It looked like something out of a storybook. Inside, the cabin was warm and smelled like pine. There was a fireplace, a small kitchen, and 2 bedrooms. We unpacked our things, made some hot cocoa, and played board games. That night, we sat by the fire telling stories and laughing. It felt nice to be away from the world. The next morning I woke up early. The others were still asleep. I decided to go outside and take a walk. The air was crisp and the snow sparkled in the sunlight. I walked around the cabin enjoying the silence. As I reached the back of the cabin, I noticed something strange. There was a round wooden cover on the ground, partially buried in the snow. It looked like the lid of an old well. I brushed off the snow and saw that it was made of thick, weathered wood with rusty metal hinges. I found it odd that the owner hadn't mentioned a well. I leaned closer, trying to see if I could hear anything. Suddenly, I thought I heard a faint scratching sound from beneath the cover. I froze, listening carefully. The sound stopped. I told myself it was probably just my imagination. I went back inside and didn't mention the well to anyone. We spent the day playing games and cooking. That night, as we sat by the fire, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The cabin felt colder, even with the fire going strong. Around midnight, I heard a noise outside. It sounded like footsteps crunching in the snow, followed by a dragging sound. I looked out the window but saw nothing. The noise stopped. I told myself it was probably an animal. The next morning I went outside to check. Near the well, the snow was disturbed. There were long, deep scratches in the snow, leading from the well into the woods. There were no footprints, just the scratches. The wooden cover was slightly ajar, and the nails looked bent, as if something had tried to pry it open. I felt a chill run down my spine. I went back inside and told the others that we should leave. At first, they were hesitant, but when they saw how serious I was, they agreed. We packed our things and loaded the car. Ben tried to start the engine, but it wouldn't turn over. He tried again and again, but nothing happened. Then we heard the dragging sound again, louder this time. We looked toward the back of the cabin and saw a figure standing there. It was tall and thin, with long arms that reached the ground. Its skin was pale and its eyes were dark. It didn't move, just stood there, watching us. Ben tried the engine one more time and it finally started. He put the car in gear and we drove away as fast as we could. I looked back and saw the figure step out from behind the cabin. It didn't follow us, but I had the feeling it could have if it wanted to. We didn't stop driving until we reached a gas station. None of us spoke about what we saw. We never went back to that cabin and we never talked about it again. But sometimes I think about that well, and the thing that was beneath it. I wonder if it's still there, waiting for someone else to find it. A few summers back, 2017 I think, my cousin Emily and I decided to rent a cabin for a long weekend. We hadn't seen each other in months and thought it'd be a fun way to catch up. Just the two of us, out in the woods. No distractions, no phones, just some peace and quiet. We booked this tiny old cabin near a place called Hollow Creek in Oregon. It was way out there, like gravel road for miles, kind of remote. The cabin itself looked straight out of a postcard, small, wooden, kind of worn down, but charming. It sat right on the edge of a quiet lake. The water was smooth and still, like glass. Not a sound besides the breeze in the trees and the occasional bird. Perfect for a little escape. We got there Friday afternoon, tossed our bags inside, and made ourselves at home. Emily took the upstairs loft, and I grabbed the downstairs bedroom. There was no cell service, but the cabin had an old radio, a wood-burning stove, and these giant windows that looked out onto the lake. That first night we made pasta, played cards, and sat on the deck watching the sun sink into the water. It felt peaceful, like the kind of silence you don't get in regular life. But then things started to get weird. Saturday morning I woke up early. The sky was still kind of gray and foggy, so I stepped outside for some fresh air. That's when I noticed it, a small wooden rowboat floating out on the lake. Just sitting there, no one in it, no paddles. Just a boat. It looked old. Faded paint, chipped edges, like it had been out there a while. I figured maybe it had come loose from someone else's dock. When Emily came down, I told her about it. She peeked out the window, shrugged, and said maybe a neighbor left it there. We didn't think too much about it. That day we hiked around the trails behind the cabin, found a creek, picked wild berries, and just enjoyed being disconnected. But that night, as we were cooking dinner, I happened to glance out the window again. The boat had moved. It was a lot closer now, maybe 20 feet from our dock, just sitting there in the dark, rocking gently. Still no one in it. I called Emily over. She looked out, frowned, and said, "That's kind of creepy." We laughed it off, but it stuck with me. I kept looking back at it, half expecting to see someone appear in the boat or splash into the water. But nothing happened. We tried to ignore it, lit a fire, made s'mores, and played music on the radio. Still, every once in a while, one of us would glance toward the lake. The boat never moved again. Not that night. But Sunday morning changed everything. I woke up to the sound of a soft thump. Not loud, just enough to pull me out of sleep. I looked at the clock, 6:13 a.m. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and heard it again. Thump. From outside. I got out of bed, walked to the big front window, and stopped cold. The boat was tied to our dock, not floating near it, not drifting close. Tied. With a thick rope, knotted around the wood post at the end of the dock. I called out to Emily, and she rushed down, still in her pajamas. We both stared at it, not saying a word. It hadn't just floated there. Someone had put it there, in the middle of the night. And then I saw something inside it. At first it looked like trash, a crumpled bag or old cloth. But as the light got stronger, I realized what it was. A photograph. It was half tucked under one of the boat's seats. We stepped out together, slowly walking down the dock. I picked it up with trembling fingers. It was a picture of us. Me and Emily. Sitting inside the cabin on the couch, laughing. The shot was taken from outside the window. You could see the glass reflected in the image. We had no idea someone had been there, watching us. That photo could only have been taken the night before Emily turned pale. "Nope, nope, nope, nope," she said, backing away. We both ran back inside, slammed the door, locked it, and pulled all the curtains shut. We didn't speak for a while. What was there to say? Someone had been out there, right outside our window. They had taken a picture of us, printed it, and left it in the boat. Then tied the boat to our dock. I checked every window and door. Everything was still locked. Nothing broken. No footprints. Just that boat and that photo. We packed our stuff in a blur. Didn't fold anything. Just shoved clothes into bags, grabbed our food and car keys, and bolted out of there. As we drove away, I looked back one last time. The boat was still there, still tied to the dock. But something was different. It was rocking now, like someone had just stepped out of it. We didn't stop until we hit the main road. Our first stop was the tiny sheriff's station in town. We showed them the photo, told them everything, but all they said was, "You weren't harmed, there's not much we can do." Emily got angry, demanded they at least go check it out. They promised to send a patrol car. We never found out if they did. That night, at home, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that photo. The way we were laughing, unaware. The way someone had been so close. And that wasn't the end of it. The next day I searched online for anything about Hollow Creek. Buried deep in some old forums and camping blogs, I started finding stuff. Other people had stories. A couple in 2015 found animal bones stacked neatly on their cabin porch. A group of college kids had gone out to the same area and came back to find pictures of themselves sleeping, left in their backpacks. One woman said she heard footsteps on the roof every night of her stay. It was all the same theme being watched. Sometimes the stories said people saw someone in the woods. Sometimes it was notes, sometimes it was boats. And always the police never did anything. No one was ever hurt technically. Nothing was ever stolen. But someone, something, was there. Watching. Waiting. Emily and I haven't been back to the woods since. No more quiet weekends. No more unplugged cabins. These days we book hotels. With crowds. With front desks. With security cameras. We still have the photo, by the way. It's hidden in a shoebox in my closet. We never figured out who took it, or how they got so close. But I still think about that boat and I wonder if it's still there, tied to that same dock, waiting for someone new to find it. Have you ever had one of those nights that just sticks with you? Like something's off, but you don't realize how bad it is until it's almost too late? Yeah. This is one of those stories. It was back in 2013. I was 29, doing grad school, stuff at a small university in Oregon. My name's Hannah. I had this quiet little apartment on the edge of a pine forest just outside a town called Gray Ridge. Not much out there except the occasional deer, lots of fog, and a weird silence that sets in after sundown. It was peaceful most of the time. Now I have this old friend named Luke. We'd been close in college but drifted a bit. He was one of those free spirit types. No phone, no job, just vibes. At the time, Luke was on this personal mission to walk across America, carrying nothing but a beat-up backpack and a strange obsession with documenting abandoned places along the way. Weird, I know, but he was always into that kind of stuff. Anyway, around early November, Luke called me from some payphone in Idaho, said he needed a break from the road and asked if he could crash at my place for a while. He sounded tired, more tired than I'd ever heard him. So I said yeah. A mutual friend drove him out to Gray Ridge. We had a nice quiet Thanksgiving, made too much food, and drank cheap wine. He said he just needed to rest up until spring. Then he'd hit the road. Again. At first it was fine. I was mostly staying with my girlfriend Mia in the city, so Luke had the place to himself. But weeks turned into months and something started to shift. He became weird. Like staying up all night, murmuring to himself, scribbling in these grimy little notebooks he kept hidden under the couch. He wouldn't talk about what was in them. By February, I was ready for him to go. He knew it too. So when the snow melted and Luke said he wanted to pick up his walk exactly where he'd left off, some spot in rural Idaho, I agreed to drive him. I thought, great, I'll drop him off and finally have my apartment back. We left early, in the morning. It was a weirdly warm day for February. Foggy though, like the kind of fog that moves like it's alive. The drive wasn't too bad, maybe 6 hours. I dropped Luke off on this cracked 2-lane road surrounded by nothing but trees. He hugged me goodbye, said, "If you see her, don't stop," then turned and walked into the fog. "If you see her?" I asked, but he was already gone. That line rattled around in my head the whole drive back. Now here's where things start to go wrong. My GPS rerouted me. Instead of putting me back on the main highway, it had me zigzagging through a bunch of unfamiliar back roads. I figured whatever. It was supposed to be faster. But as the sky started to darken, I realized I hadn't seen another car in over an hour. The woods on either side of the road looked strange, like they were pressing in closer than before, and the fog was back, thicker now, curling under the tires, drifting across the windshield. It looked almost purposeful. I turned on the radio to cut the silence. Static. Tried my phone. No bars. My stomach started to knot up. Then I noticed the headlights behind me. At first, it was just a car. I figured they were stuck on the same weird route as me. But after 20 minutes, they were still there. Every turn I took, they took. Every slow down, every speed up, they matched me exactly. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe they were. Just headed to the same place. I kept driving. But then I reached a fork in the road. There were two left turns about 100 feet apart. GPS told me to take the second one. I was already in the left lane for the first. At the last second, I went straight and turned left at the next one. The car behind me did the same exact thing. That's when the panic really started. I called Mia and told her what was happening. She tried to calm me down, but she didn't get it. "It's probably nothing," she said. "Just someone heading home." But I knew it wasn't nothing. The road narrowed. The trees felt like they were leaning in. I saw something at the edge of the woods just for a second. A tall figure, completely still, no face. I blinked. It was gone. Now my gas light was on. I hadn't seen a gas station in hours. I felt like I was trapped in some kind of loop, like the road was folding in on itself. Every driveway I passed looked abandoned. Windows boarded up. No lights. The car behind me stayed close, just far enough back that I couldn't see the driver. Its windows were tinted pitch black. No visible license plate. At one point, I slammed on my brakes for a deer. The car behind me didn't even flinch. No brake lights. No reaction. I wasn't even sure it was real. Then the road opened up into a small town. Streetlights, a few 24-hour places, an actual gas station. I was shaking so hard I could barely hold the wheel. At a red light, I turned in my seat and stared directly at the car behind me. I pretended to talk on the phone, describing it loudly. The car didn't move. The light turned green. I pulled into the gas station, parking close to the entrance. The other car didn't follow. It rolled past, slow and steady, then disappeared down the road. I ran inside, told the clerk someone had been following me. He stepped out and looked around. Nothing, but I knew what I saw. And when I turned back toward my car, there were muddy handprints on the back windshield, too high up for a normal person to reach. The clerk helped me fill up and stayed outside the whole time. He gave me directions to the nearest highway. I didn't stop again until I was back in Grey Ridge, shaking, heart racing, eyes constantly flicking to the rearview mirror. I never saw that car again, and I never heard from Luke either. He stopped posting updates. His blog went silent. No one's seen him since. Sometimes I think about what he said. If you see her, don't stop. And sometimes, when I'm driving late at night and the fog rolls in, I wonder, was it a person behind me or was it her?